In the recent years, the discourse surrounding climate change has evolved from mere acknowledgement to a resolute call for concrete, actionable solutions. The imperative to mitigate and adapt to climate impact changes has driven a growing emphasis on technological innovation, with governments and businesses playing key roles in driving this transformative process. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the panel discussion, Government-Business Collaboration for Technological Solutions to Climate Change. Today, we gather to explore a topic of paramount importance, one that resonates deeply with the urgent need for collaborative action in addressing the challenges posed by climate change. It is crucial to recognize the pivotal role of collaborative efforts in leveraging technological advancements in combating climate change. The public and private sectors come with their unique strengths and resources, which when combined becomes a potent catalyst to the various scaling solutions that we are discussing here and beyond. And today, it's my privilege to have a distinguished panel, experts from both government and private sector, to join me on this panel to discuss this very urgent and interesting topic, I would say. Now, throughout this discussion, we would explore the successes, the hurdles, the challenges, how can we overcome all these from the young panelists out there. Now, that said, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce the panelists for the day in alphabetical order. Allow me to do that. A mechanical engineer with experience in the petroleum engineering field and has served as a local vendor development team lead, focusing on enhancing local value-added initiatives. The Net Zero Manager at the Ministry of Transport, Communications and Information Technology in the Sultanate of Oman, Abdullah Al-Busaidi. Let's welcome him to the podium. He's also the Vice Chair of the Board of Directors of the Oman Society of Engineers and a member of Gulf Engineering Union, and also represents the Sultanate's Environment Committee of the Arab Engineers Union. An accomplished technology policy advisor and advocate that for the past 10 years has worked across the world and helped technology companies launch and grow in multiple regions, including MENA, APAC, and North America, while maintaining a productive and beneficial relationship with governments and regulators. Head of Talabat Regional Team of Public Affairs and Communications, May Yusuf. She oversees teams in 8 markets around the region. She also holds a master's in international relations from Beijing University of International Business and Economics, where she published multiple papers on Sino-Arab political economy relations. A man who leads Aramex's strategy to convert its entire fleet to electric vehicles, and who has also led the successful solar farm project of Oman Operations and the 2 rooftop solar farm projects on Aramex Dubai Logistics City facilities. Raji Hattar, Chief Sustainable Officer, Aramex. He joined Aramex in 1991 as a corporate IT officer. In 2006, took the role of Chief Projects Officer and helped in establishing the sustainable team. He's a very senior person and has got a long bio. I would really request you to go to his LinkedIn and take a look. Right. Team Bahrain, for me as a person who has lived all my life in Bahrain and still living in Bahrain, is more than an emotion. Well, every Bahraini who resides in Bahrain and others like me, we feel that. That's Team Bahrain. I can see the support from Team Bahrain here. Well, that is an introduction for the next panelist. He's one such. He's part of Team Bahrain, part of this cross-government team working on setting and achieving clear and credible climate targets of the Kingdom of Bahrain. Director of Studies at the Prime Minister's Office of Bahrain, Walid Faisal Al-Bazm. Walid has been involved in development and launch of SAFA, the Kingdom's first voluntary carbon offsetting and management platform, which aims to raise awareness at both the corporate and individual levels. Well, My name is Raji Unikrishnan, and I am a senior journalist based out of Bahrain. You must have understood that. Thank you all for joining us. Let's move to the discussion. There is a mic somewhere there. I would request you to share the mic, please. Right? Good. Walid actually wanted to have the end seat, and you had the other end seat. Fine. Okay. Let me begin with a common question to all the panelists, both the government and the private sector. What are the key ingredients you think which would make a successful private-public partnership in the context of climate mitigation and adaptation? Would you like to start, Walid?
Sure, happy to do so. First of all, thank you so much for hosting us here, and thank you to the WGEO for assembling this wonderful panel of esteemed panelists. I'll start with an example. In the Kingdom of Bahrain, we recognized very early on that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to the climate agenda, and every government needs to consider they need to consider a number of things, including their resources, both natural and material, their development profiles, and their size and their capacities. And at COP26, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince and Prime Minister set out very clear objectives explicitly: net zero by 2060 with the interim goal of a 30% reduction in emissions by 2035. So what we did as government was we assembled a cross-government team, and we took a step back and put together a very clear, credible, and responsible pathway to achieving those targets. And we know that there are multiple models that can be pursued. There's an arm's length command and control model through regulation. We opted for a partnership model where we worked very closely and collaboratively with the private sector to set a clear pathway to our targets. And that was very important because it allowed us to capitalize on potential synergies with the private sector. It allowed us to gain access to visibility into markets and how they're evolving over time with new priorities on the climate agenda. And it allowed us to understand where our deficits were from a skill set point of view and to address them preemptively.
Right.
So all of these things put together, we emerged from that exercise with a national energy strategy, which was announced in the lead up to COP28. And the national energy strategy we refer to it as Blueprint Bahrain.
Blueprint Bahrain, yes.
And if you have the time to visit the pavilion, you could learn more about it.
Yes.
But in a nutshell, it covers multiple levers, including on the supply side, on the demand side, so the energy mix on the supply side, efficiencies on the demand side, and then abatement, the deployment and scaling of abatement technologies as well.
Right. Very well explained. As you rightly said, it's no one-size-fits-all solution for this. Let's hear from May on the ingredients you think.
Yeah. Thank you, Raji, for bringing us together. This is a really, really interesting panel, and I'm humbled to be sitting with experts in the field and partners we are actively working with as Talabat, as a private sector player, who is very humble but honest when it comes to sustainability topic, with a great team behind a lot of efforts. And I have to warn you that the debate started before the panel, so we're sitting there and already having a very heated discussion.
That's interesting.
But I think when it comes to public-private partnership, like key success metrics for the carbon, the carbon thing is still stuck on me, for the climate action, I feel we shouldn't be treating this topic any differently, as in what is the element of a public-private partnership in general. There are like key elements, and of course for this topic specifically, as we are as a region learning more about it every day, and we're very lucky to have COP27 and COP28 back-to-back in our region, which really infested this dialogue in here that wasn't maybe top of mind for a lot of us before that. Mainly like Western-led, mainly like led by certain regions. So I feel like we need to tap into like these key elements, whether it's public interest in the topic. So this generates a lot of movement, a lot of dialogue on both the public and the private. the risk sharing between two parties that also drives big of that. I think also the incentives, whether it's from the government driven and of course the ongoing dialogue in general and transparency. And I know here Raji will agree with me, no greenwashing, no like high level promises. And I think also His Excellency at the beginning of COP when he was opening, he was talking, there is a big gap between the ambition and the action. We need to bridge this gap. And I feel like the UAE and the participants in COP this year hopefully will be taking more initiatives. And I feel like we are definitely at a really right spot at the right time. So if we really follow through on these like key elements and keep the transparency and the open, the dialogue, the trial and error, allow room for mistakes and learnings, then we can get somewhere. And yeah, that's what I think.
Right. And I'm happy that you already had the debate out there. That's a healthy debate, you know, that itself shows that we are on the right direction. We both need to find a middle path, be it the entities. Let's hear from Raji.
Well, thank you very much, and I think they said it all here. Private sector alone cannot do it. Governments alone cannot do it. It's been a fact for ages. If not all governments, most of them signed the Paris Agreement. All of them have put targets by 2030 to reach a certain amount of CO2 reductions. Unfortunately, little governments across the globe have communicated to the private sector asking them to put targets. And what will happen now, and I've been in business for the past 35 years, governments will come back to the private sector 2027, 2028, and they'll tell them, you have 1 year, cut 40%. And then we come 2030, and as we did with the Millennium Goals, and we say, well, sorry guys, we couldn't meet it. So let's put, and now there's a discussion somewhere here saying, let's look at 2.6 at 2100. So we don't want to reach that point. So I think it's extremely important now, governments and private sector, to start working on these targets and make sure that everybody is aligned there. Otherwise, we will not be able to reach that. And I know some governments in the region here, but I know Oman is doing very well on that. Bahrain, UAE, 2 days back, led the donation or the investment or contribution to the damage and loss fund, and this drove other countries to start putting money there. So the region is moving there, and I hope we'll move faster than the other parts of the world, because you know the south is more impacted of the climate change. But we need to see more of a public-private partnership, and it has to be very clear, to run away from the greenwash. Because I will never say I'll be carbon neutral by 2030, and I go 2029 and I offset 90% of my emissions. So I'm not doing anything. I'm just buying credits from somewhere else.
Right. And from your answer, the take back is, yes, the region is definitely making a lot of initiatives, taking a lot of initiatives. We'll hear from the Omani point of view. Abdullah.
Thank you, first of all, and by having me here with this panelist. I think they have said it all. What we need exactly on the partnership, we need to build that trust between the government and the private sector. We are in Oman, we have built that understanding, not long time back, unfortunately, but we are in the way of building that trust. Beginning in the discussion of decarbonization plans, we have gathered all different entities where we have made our plan clearly on the 4 major contributors sectors, and we have built a seamless workshop between the private sector, what they need, and the government sector as a target. And we have built that initiatives and plan to achieve the 21% reduction on those 4 targets. However, the challenge will be there, and still we are seeking for the access to knowledge, access to know-how. Capacity building is important for us as well in Oman. The finances, we are in the right direction. Minister of Finance have taken few leaps to reach there, and we think that we will be one of the first countries around the world who will issue those sukuk and the green bonds.
Yeah.
So that's quite important to make our leverage working right to achieve the decarbonization.
Right.
But indeed, partnership is important, and it's
Definitely.
very much key. to achieve the decarbonization.
I would just ask you to hold the mic because my question now will be to the two government representatives. We usually hear a lot of private sector voices. My question is not about those voices, but my question would be, what is the government looking forward to from the private sector? What kind of support is the government expecting from the private sector, especially in terms of our journey towards green future, like infrastructure? Would you like to take that first and then come to Walid?
I believe that they have the same intention. We are dealing with private sector. If I'm talking to my neighbor Aramex, we have recently discussed a couple of POCs, proof of concept, especially in the last mile delivery. We have spoken that with Talabat. As a private sector, they want to achieve that, but they need something from the government, which is
It's mutual, yeah.
regulation, standards, making things much easier for them to access to that platform. And this is the role of the government, and we need to look to the private sector as a partner to enable that element for them. As a government, we have taken that step. Talking from a Ministry of Transport perspective, actually our two major area of decarbonization, it's the light vehicle and the heavy vehicles or heavy trucks. Those are contributes almost 90% of the total transport sector. If you are taking out the maritime for the time being, because there's other challenges there in the maritime. However, in the light vehicles, heavy trucks, both are have to be led by the government, by the private sector. However, we have set some policies, we have set some incentives to enable those two elements. Not all of them has been announced yet, but we are in the way to announce those incentives and standards to enable the decarbonization plan of Oman.
All right. We'll come to Walid. On the same question, plus also, Walid, if you may add to it, are there any specific projects or collaborations that you would want to elaborate on? Not maybe short term, at least those with a long-term impact.
So one of the things that we did is when we took a step back, looked at our targets and tried to put together a credible plan to achieve those targets, is we leveraged our small country advantage. And what we did is we recognized and understood that 80% of emissions come from 7 emitters. And so what we did is we spoke to all of them. We affectionately call them our 7 smokestacks, but they are our partners. And what we did was we sat with them and we put together a very clear plan that addresses all of the needs of those private actors, with a view to being able to, like I said before, leverage what that collaboration could bring. As government, in terms of what we need from the private sector, I hesitate to say that we need anything that markets aren't already demanding from the private sector. We've seen a consumer base over the last decade and few years become much more discerning and selective in terms of their consumer habits. And that is across industries and up and down the value chain as well. So not just retail products. And so the private sector has every incentive to move forward. It's our role as government to ensure there's a regular and institutionalized feedback loop and to make sure that we're listening to our partners in the private sector and addressing their concerns and needs through regulation, through infrastructure development and things like that.
Right. Since you touched upon the regulations and policies, let's take it up from there. Are there any specific regulations? My question is open to all the panelists. Any specific regulations that you would look at, which is borne fruits or which you found effective? And how do you think these regulatory frameworks could be further enhanced in terms of implementing sustainable solutions? May, would you like to take it?
I think that the conversation is there, but in terms of regulations that are in the region, I think we're still a bit early. But what we are having that is very great, that there is transparent and two ways, as what he said, there is a feedback loop. And for example, like in the UAE, there has been like already regulations about plastic bags, for example. And then we've been in a lot of workshops, a lot of feedback. For example, Talabat as a business model, we don't have an offline point of sale. So we had to adapt to how can we do that with our current customer base, and we don't have an offline point of sale. How can they pay the tax for the plastic bag versus the traditional like F&B model? So there has been that back and forth, and bending on that, there has been an edit as well, and changes in these regulations. And earlier today, we were at the Arab League discussion, and Her Excellency, the Undersecretary of Trade, were talking about the brave approach of the governments in our region. And I think all of the governments are very ambitious, and there is a huge momentum for growth, and they are not afraid to walk away from a regulatory framework if it doesn't work, if it doesn't add the value, if it doesn't achieve the goal point. So, to answer your question, I don't think we are there yet in terms of a model that worked perfectly in the region, but there's definitely a room for feedback. There is a room for dialogue. There is a room for seeing what actually works and what doesn't work. And I don't think there is a lot of obstacles to walking away from. If it doesn't work, let's try something else. This sandboxing mentality is here, and I think this is absolutely what this region needs. So hopefully in the future we'll have that very great model that we can benchmark and we can repeat. But as of today, there's still, I think, a little bit early for us to say, oh, this is the perfect policy, let's work towards it. But there are elements. There is incentives. For example, Abdullah shared earlier with us about incentives, like tax exemptions for certain like sustainable solutions. This is definitely no-brainer. Like, it will make sense for businesses. It will add up, right? So there are things that we know that has to be there, but I don't think we have the 360 model yet.
Yeah, and it's also positive that there is, we identify that there is room, and we have the freedom to work around it and address that, isn't it?
Exactly.
Mr. Raji, would you like to add to it, please?
Well, actually, maybe 5 years back, I wouldn't say what I'm saying now, but what they're saying now in some countries in the region here, private sector is trying to follow the steps of the governments, which is amazing. What Abdullah mentioned about the partnership with the government on the drones and the pods, we followed the steps of the government over there. And currently we are working on having a solar farm to be able to complete the whole cycle on that. In the UAE, the same. We are testing now drones and pods, and the government is pushing for that. In other GCC countries, is the same. So we didn't reach the 360, definitely, and I don't think anybody has reached that yet, because even in the most advanced economies, you still see that there are some gaps that are left for private sector. But let me emphasize on something here. Nothing related to environment is a cost center for private sector. It is, if not 90%, 95%, it has always a positive impact on the bottom line of any company that implements sustainability or environment-related solutions. A solar farm would have a return on investment of 3 to 4 years, 5 years at max. You can never have any investment on earth that would give you a 20% return. EVs would save you 10 to 15%. So private sector looks at it, and I always promote environment as a business case and not something because we love the environment and and all these.
I like the honesty. I like the honesty.
Private sector it was created for profit. So they would love you, and the minute their bottom line is hit, they will tell you, okay, can we postpone this 3-4 years ahead? So you need to sell it as a business case, and it works perfectly with investors, with the management teams. So it is a business case. It's not something that we do because we like. We had the luxury 30, 40 years back, but now no, forget it. We are impacted. We are headquartered here, but when we had snow in New York 3-4 years back, the airport was closed. We suffered for like 3-4 days, and then we had to move all our shipments from New York to Chicago on trucks and try to find planes coming to the Middle East. The volcano in Greenland or New Zealand, I don't remember when it was that, when all Europe was covered with dust, the planes were, sorry?
Iceland.
Yeah,
Iceland, yeah.
The planes had to travel to South Africa and come up here. So we are impacted, even though we don't have anything in the region here yet. But the rain that came here 2 weeks back, if you remember, we were stuck. We couldn't do anything. So it's extremely important that there are partnerships, and the governments are trying now, and they are understanding more than before that this is extremely important for the economy rather than just something that to fulfill the commitments we did to the global communities.
As I said, I like the honesty, but at the same time, I think we are also moving closer to that deeper understanding of the need as well. Definitely, the business out there, yes,
The need is there.
Yeah,
But what
definitely.
I'm trying to say, sometimes you need to be a good salesperson to be
yes,
able to pass
yes,
the idea.
yes.
And if you cannot pass it as you know, environment, and people would look at as
Only with the-
fine.
yeah.
Sell it as a business case and it pays back.
I do agree with Raji, 100%. And just to complement what he have said, in the marine time, although I try to avoid talking much about it, on the shipment, while the transshipment happens during the berth, all right, we had an issue of emission from those, and we have concentrated Sohar, it's the most emitted, Sohar port. And we have sell it as a business case when we introduced the shore power. And the business case was to the vessels, you just install the shore power and you will be paying less than using your own generator. It was a pure saving the environment by the business case. And that works well.
Mhm.
And that's what we invest now more in the infrastructure for the shore power because of the business case. And I really think that's the best way of it. The example of Siemens in UAE, yesterday I heard the story where the government took the initiative to invest on the infrastructure in the beginning, but they have stopped. They said, no, we cannot invest more. And this will happen during the whole cross of government. Government will have to stop in some way. They will not invest more in the decarbonization. They will allow more of the business cases to come.
Right. Thank you very much. Now, let me give the floor to the private sector. Aramex and Talabat, two entities that are really close to people, close to connections, people-to-people connections. Let's hear from you some of the success stories, or at least examples of sustainable initiatives. Let's begin with Raji. And what do you think were the real success elements? You would leave it to the lady first? Right.
I
Maids,
mean,
OT.
because it will be a very tough act to follow if Raji goes first. Aramex have been doing a lot of great work for a very long time. Well, Talabat has been around for 20 years next year. It will be 20 years since we were founded in Kuwait, 2004. We're still like kind of young at heart, and most of the markets we've been around for 10 years. And sustainability for us, I mean, I have Demi here, she's an expert on the topic, but we've been, as I said, humble but consistent. We've been looking at who we are as a company and what is the closest thing to us. There's a lot of great causes out there. There's a lot of important initiatives out there, but we're also a business and we have to focus on one or two areas.
Indeed.
And we've chose to focus on the thing that is closer to us. We are a food delivery tech company, so we looked at food and food waste. And we're looking at economic opportunities because we also, through our business, our ecosystem, we offer a lot of opportunities to a lot of people, and a lot of people are able to have earning opportunities because we exist and because we are enabling partners and we're enabling supply chains and so on. We're also looking at what can we do within our own ecosystem. So I think we're the first company in our industry to be measuring our carbon emissions, and we've been doing it for the last 3 years. We are here working with actually two of the panelists here, Walid and Abdullah, our partners and stakeholders we work with respectively in Bahrain and Oman. In Bahrain, working with Safa to really like pilot the carbon offsetting habit and see if there's an appetite from our customers in the region. How can we work on that? And it has been really interesting because I think Bahrain is the only country that has this kind of setup.
Yes.
And I know that Raji is not super impressed with the whole setup, but it's still, I think it still matters. It's still very important. It's something that I'm from this region. I'm originally from Egypt. We've never heard of concept like carbon offsetting. What is a carbon footprint? These definitions are new to our region, and the fact that we're here talking about that is a win in its own.
Definitely, yeah.
And in Oman, we've done a very successful pilot for drone delivery, which is one of the ways that we're looking at drones and robotics in the UAE, we've done almost like 10 pilots for electric vehicles. And we've really like hoping to scale up steadily and surely when it makes sense. And as said before, we always go back to, okay, how can we, what makes sense to the business? Where are the gaps? And when Raji said, present as a business case too close to home because of COP, there's a lot of conversation for us as a business.
Yes.
And I looked at Susie and Demir and the audience, my colleagues, they're both smiling because we know this is definitely the right way. But there are things to do, yes. There are also small initiatives. We've been part of the Dubai Can initiative with the Dubai government and like funded a lot of the water dispensers around the city that helps save a lot of plastic. There's a lot of like small things that we're doing, but we're trying to stay close to our core as much as we can, so we are able to really take serious steps in the future, hopefully. But yeah, there are like many, many more things, as you know, but yeah, these are a few of the things that Talabat have been able to deliver on.
Good job. Very good. Let's hear from Aramex.
Well, we look at it differently. We look at the cause and not at the impact alone. So first you need to know where is your impact and why is it happening, and then we can put the solutions. I can easily tomorrow shift all my 450 vans in Dubai into EV vans, but I didn't solve the real problem. So at the beginning, I do operations efficiencies. I make sure that this is really what I want, and these are the number of vans. I was just mentioning earlier, in Singapore, if you want to add one van to our fleet, we have to go to the Ministry of Transport and prove to them that we have zero capacity with our existing fleet, so they allow us to add a new car, which should be the case all over the world. Again, we all use motorbikes. We have around 90,000 motorbikes in UAE delivering goods. That's beyond imagination.
Mm-hmm.
So you need first to look at the cause of what's happening. Before we install solar farms, we do energy efficiency in the warehouses. So instead of installing 3 meg solar farm, we might install 1 mega solar farm. But not because it's free, then I can put anything and I can keep just utilizing resources. We started hybrid vehicles in 2008 in our fleet. But with that, we looked at our internal processes, and in our procurement policy in 2008, we don't own assets, we lease. So our procurement officer now looks at the policy, and it says, you are not allowed to lease any vehicle that is not Euro 5 or Euro 6 standard vehicle. Cut, it's not my job, it's his job. It's not sustainability, it's operations. So, but when I sold it to them at that time, it was Euro 4, Euro 5. The Euro 4 or Euro 5 standard engine vehicles were consuming 25% less fuel than the Euro 0 and Euro 1. So for the chief financial officer at that time, that was a gain of 20%, 25% on the profit side.
Mm-hmm.
The same for solar. When you tell them return on investment 3, 4, 5 years, they would love it. So 2016, we piloted the first EVs in the region here in Jordan, and currently we have 10 vans that have been running for 7 years as we speak. We started a pilot in Dubai in April, and we are looking at more vans. Now, all this is good, but the obstacles are there. Infrastructure is not there, so you cannot charge. And that's a major player in many of the countries that personally, you can just install a charger at home, but if I'm having a courier that does 60, 70 stops a day, he needs at least once or twice to charge if he's driving more than 200 kilos. So there is a lot. Again, on the business side, 2008 we said printing is not allowed unless you show a reason for that. But we went to the IT and we told them, you're not allowed to buy a printer that does not do double-face printing. So immediately you've cut 50% from the paper.
Yes.
And that's not sustainability. Immediately you told them, you are saving on the paper side. So you build it within the business process. It becomes easy and you don't own it. And my team are 3, me and 2 more people. We are running 159 projects now across 68 countries because you don't own them. Fleet goes to the fleet manager. Solar goes to the facilities management. Paper goes to the accounting. So I don't own anything. I come as a team, we tell them we need to do 1, 2, 3. These are our targets and these are the potential projects. We work with them on the design. They go and implement. So you see it running as part of the business model and not something that you are doing because you are the sustainability team sitting over there.
Right. It's interesting to listen to every different private sector, the different success stories, the different styles of how they get sustainability practices into it. Thank you so much. Now, we move into the next question. In the next decade, what do you think the priorities should be from both government and private sector views in our journey towards sustainable practices? Shall we go to Abdullah, please?
From a government perspective, especially in the transport, I believe what's coming, it's supposed to be in line with what Oman wants. What we have, one of the biggest challenges we have currently, it's the rate of unemployment.
Unemployment, okay.
So we have taken the sustainability agenda, part of employment rate, and we have put in that part of it. And Oman will be, hopefully, if the hydrogen projects went well, then Oman will be one of the biggest producer and exporter of hydrogen. The hydrogen will play a bigger role in the future. This is what we hope. And this will be a key enabler for us to reduce the unemployment rate in Oman. Because we have that as part of our challenge and part of our vision. The other element that we are focusing on, it is to increase the spend on the R&D. The R&D is quite it's quite low spend in Oman. I think it's even the lowest among the region currently. But however, there is different initiatives has been started and moving on. One of the good initiatives that we have introduced recently on the R&D, that we have developed a full 100% Omani co-combustion engine, where you use hydrogen plus diesel to reduce 40% of the emission of that exist truck. And this is a pioneer, it's first in the region. So we are trying to push in that direction, and this is the role of the government, to put incentives and regulation to support in that direction. This is in terms of the sustainable elements and what we can really build on it to make the most out of it.
Yes.
Definitely there is more programs, but I will allow the floor to go.
Yeah, I would come back to Waleed maybe. And as Abdullah said, you know, it's combining, putting together challenges, vision and goal, and then figuring it out. And yeah, that's...
So I think we're fortunate in this region, in the Gulf, because we have visionary leadership and there's a clear direction of travel. And that on its own is an important signal to the private sector. We are here as governments to support. And we've seen this across the board. And Bahrain is trying to position itself as a hub for the trialing and testing of green technologies that are perhaps in their nascent phases, but we have excellent infrastructure, a very flexible regulatory framework. Access to government is very easy. We can course correct very quickly. We have seamless access to all of the biggest markets around us. And so our view for the next decade is to serve as a hub for some of these technologies to be trialed before then being scaled elsewhere. And our partnership with Talabat, with Safa, is based on that idea, right? So we're very excited. But it's important for us to always bear in mind that our role is to play a supporting role, and not to overregulate, and not to underregulate at the same time.
All right. I would when you pass the mic to May, I would also want May and Raji to also address this question of the profit versus sustainability practices when it comes to private sector. If you could combine both.
I think I'll go back to the point Raji made, is making the sustainable practice part of the business functions and not like there's a standalone sustainability initiatives. But to get there, it takes time. And I'm very happy to hear two of our current stakeholders talking about R&D, talking about regulatory flexibility, talking about, because this is exactly what we need. Because as a business, to find that right place where we can have part of our operation, part of the things we do day to day, done in a sustainable way that can answer to the climate action goals and can answer to the visionary targets of the markets where we operate, we need to learn a lot. And to get there, we need that flexibility. We need that incubator room to really understand. And of course, that comes hand in hand with what the government is doing, whether it's like funding, whether it's incentives, regulations, and so on. So from where we sit today, like we're just like looking at what can we do as a company, and there is a huge room for us to go. There has to be a lot of research, there has to be a lot of understanding, a lot of learning, and this is why we are piloting. We are like looking at all of these different areas in different markets, because each market has its own condition, has its own economic situation as well. Until we get there, and I know we will get there, because looking at the GCC in particular and the MENA region in general, there are things that are inevitable to happen. Like we know that generating clean energy here is 1/3 of a cost of it any other place in the world. So it's just a matter of time before these things come and become, because they're cheaper, they're more accessible, they're this, that. So of course, sustainable solutions are gonna be cheaper and gonna be easier to implement for us. And with that, with the right research, with the right knowledge, we'll be able to bring that and make sure that the business as profit is still there, while we are trying to implement more sustainable into it. So I'll pass it to Raji.
Well, it's how you look at sustainability. Sustainability is a risk and it's an opportunity. So it's not just a profit, it's the risk mitigation that you're doing, preventing damage in the future. Till now, we don't have carbon tax in the region. The minute carbon tax comes, it's going to hit us hard. We don't have internal pricing of carbon, which is worse. Yani if you look at your balance sheet and now you are doing profits, tomorrow if you put $100 million in carbon pricing on the debt side of your balance sheet, no investor would look at you, because this is a huge risk. So when you present it as a risk and as an opportunity, because lots of multinational clients now will not look at you if you don't have an ESG strategy and targets and you're achieving them. So this is how it works. You cannot look at it as, debit and credit. There are lots of factors that contribute to the importance of sustainability beyond how much am I spending on education of young people. But these young people, tomorrow you can get them as employees. So invest in them, they'll come back to you in a different return. Don't expect always a direct return on what you invest. In the governance side, you need to have a proper governance. Otherwise, a small problem, now we are in a small village. If a small problem happens in Dubai today, in 2 seconds, somebody sitting in Nicaragua will know about it. So your reputation will be damaged as well. So it's looking at it as a whole system, as an ecosystem, rather than just direct investment versus return.
Great. I know this topic can go on. It's interesting, and we have, I would say, a best slice of representation from both government and private sector here. Unfortunately, every good thing has to come to an end, isn't it? Let me have a wrapping comment from each one of you, quickly, if you would wish to sum up. Yes, Abdullah.
I will go back to the first beginning. Collaboration is it's a key. And we need really to have a better effort in collaboration, either between government entities or either between government and private sector. And it's always, there is a famous say which says, if there is a will, there is a way. And we need to have that will, and we need to build it. And I think in the beginning it will be very hard. Actually, we have spent now almost in the decarbonization or the net zero concept almost 5 years now, but still we are not yet there. So we need to push harder, and the push have to come from the top to bottom this time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Mr. Raji.
I'll just say it in 2 words. Look at the cause and not the impact. If you can fix the cause, the impact would be fixed automatically.
Thank you.
I will say continue the conversation, continue the dialogue, stay honest, do not overpromise. What's after all of these amazing conversation? How can we take it forward? I know for a fact that I'm gonna see Walid again and see Abdullah again and hopefully Raji again, and see how we can actually action what we say. So hold yourself accountable to what you talk about in action. And if you can't commit, then think about what you can actually do from where you sit.
Great. Walid.
I think it's an iterative process. We're not going to get it right from day one. And so it's important for these conversations to echo what has already been said, for these conversations to continue in an honest way, and for government to listen and to work collectively.
It's really impressive because we touched upon a handful of things, like the government and the private sector, their visions, their healthy differences, and we have a good representation, as I said, Oman and Bahrain in the forefront, and we mentioned about the visionary leadership, the drive, and I think to summarize, yes, we all are part of this pyramid, and we all have our own responsibilities, and we have to give that into it to make this a success. Thank you very much for being wonderful panelists, and thank you all the audience who are here with us, and WGEO for this excellent panel sessions that's going on. Thank you very much.